Well, hi there. It's Monday and time for another Monday Mastery. I'm author and dating coach Rick Sodabeer. I'm your host and here to guide you through the um, the challenging and sometimes murky waters of dating and relationships. And I'm going to try to hold my head down. I'm trying to get my lighting right, but I'm getting a reflection off my glasses on from some stuff today. So if I keep looking over the top of my glasses or the tip of my nose, please forgive me. I'm trying to keep the glare off my glasses. Anyway, it's always a challenge. I hope you had a great weekend and a great week last week and a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed whatever it is you did. I spent most of the day Saturday recording videos and getting things packed up and ready to head back south to the Kansas City area. Made that trip yesterday, and I am back in my RV, and it's just so nice to be back, and it's let me click on that, and it's an adjustment. I went from a building that was basically a warehouse type building. I had about 4,000 square feet to move around in and do things in, and now I'm down to about 240 square feet, and it's a challenge. But I love it. I love everything. Everything is at fingertips, and I have a nice setting. Hey Lisa, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. But it was a long trip yesterday, so forgive me if I ramble a little bit. It was just under. I think it was about 11 and a half hours of driving. So it was. I always enjoy the drive, but and usually when I get to the Missouri border, it's like, oh, this is the worst part of the drive. But it was so nice yesterday because the temperatures were up and the everything was still pretty much green. I mean, we're starting to see a little bit of color down here, but nothing like back in Michigan. When for those of you that see my page on Facebook, my personal page, you saw some of the pictures that I posted of the colors last week and the week before. It's just beautiful up there. But today it was 60 degrees and raining, and today in the Kansas City area it's 84 and sunny, and earlier there was not a cloud in the sky, so I was really loving it. Now the only thing that's going to be going on today, a couple of things. Number one, there's a fly that's really annoying the crap out of me. So if you see me trying to swat him, just beware. But I do have a potential technology issue here. So if anybody has any problem seeing me or hearing me, just let me know. I have a couple of alternatives, but if it gets too serious, we'll just have to pull the plug and roll from there. But anyway, on my way home, yesterday was a drive day or a travel day for me, so I didn't take a lot of time to think through a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about today. But there are a couple of things, and I am reading a really good, and I'll get to this a little bit later. I'm reading a really interesting book. It's really dry. And I can't say that I'm reading it, I'm actually listening to it because I love books on uh, audiobooks. I love audiobooks because I generally have a lot of drive time and I fill a lot of my time with audiobooks. In this particular book, it's 59 seconds and it is very dry, it's very technical, but it talks about some really interesting stuff, and I'll touch on that in a little bit, as I alluded to in the title of today's, or in the intro to today's topic. But it is a random Monday, so I am going to be random. And one of the things that I've noticed is, with certain people, we get we get a comment, when there's adverse reactions, or they do something that's probably not truly acceptable. It's We get the response from them, well, that's just the way I am. I used to hear that from my dad a lot. And being just the way I am is actually an excuse for not wanting to change. It's an excuse um, for maybe being uncaring. It could be an excuse for being lazy, because when it comes to change, it takes effort. It takes time. It takes it takes some work. Regardless of what that change is going to be. It's it takes work. You have to step outside your comfort zone. You have to push the envelope, so to speak, or think outside the box, whatever terminology you want to use, or uh, what do they call those? I don't know. If anybody knows what the word I'm thinking of, it's they colloquialism or something along that line. Whatever you choose to, however you choose to phrase it, it's it takes effort. And when you're dating somebody that says, well, that's just the way I am. Well, okay, if that's the way you are, then then something has to change. Either you have to make a change, or I have to make a change. And if I have to make a change, it's going to be to leave. Because if it's something that's unacceptable, assuming it's something unacceptable to you, that's a deal breaker for you, that's something that's a warning sign to other possibilities of a poor outcome. It could be drinking too much. It could be doing drugs. It could be verbal abuse. It could be physical abuse, and or it could be anger issues. Whenever you start seeing those types of things, and they say, "Well, that's just the way I am. I'm sorry." Yada yada yada. Well, sorry doesn't mean anything unless they are willing to make a change. And I've been doing some writing this week, and one of the things that I recognized in my marriage, or as I was dating my future ex, as we were dating, there were characteristics that I saw in her that I thought, well, I can live with that, or I can fix that. I can change that. I can change her. I can fix her. She won't do that after, I can show her what needs to be done, or how it should be done. And that was when I was in my more arrogant years. And obviously what I've come to realize over the years is that you can't change anyone. The only Other than you're the only one that you can change. You're the only one that you can motivate to do anything that will have any kind of difference. You can beg and plead. Hey, Jacqueline, glad to see you're here. Yeah, amen is right. You're the only one that you can control. You're the only one that whose feelings that you can control. I hear, and this is down a rabbit hole, but I hear so many people, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to break up now because it's his birthday. I don't want to break up now because it's the holidays. I don't want to break up now because we've got plans, and whatever it is. Well, it's always going to be a terrible time to break up. There's never ever a good time to break up. But if you're starting to see warning signs, if you're starting to see abuse, if you're starting to see uh, alcoholism, or and even if it's a functioning alcoholic, they consume way too much alcohol, and they're going to get themselves in trouble. sooner or later it's going to happen. Same thing with drugs. If they're into drugs, smoking. I've worked with people that said I swore I would never date a smoker, and I ended up dating one for 5 years. Well, why is that? Well, he said he would change. He said he would stop. Well, when you run into somebody like that, oh, come back to me after you're smoke free for a year. Then you've got some footing to stand on. Then you've got some credibility. But to be smoking in front of me and then say, yeah, I'm going to change. Well, no, that doesn't work. And that's, hey, Kathy, glad to see you're here. Thank you. Kathy says, I definitely agree with you. And so all of these things are cues, but so many times we ignore those cues. And or you can call them, and I call them cues, I call them warning signs. They're all present. But what happens is that we get overcome with the raging hormones of infatuation, and the hormones, and it literally is a cocktail of hormones. There's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and several others that they hit the same spot, as they light up the same part of the brain as the next drink for an alcoholic, or the next fix for a drug abuser, or the next cigarette for a smoker. They or the adrenaline junkies. It all hits in that same spot of the brain. People that rock climb, or not parasailing, parachuting out of an airplane. I that's on my bucket list. But by the same token, I'd much rather be in the pilot seat flying it. Let somebody else jump out of a perfectly good airplane. So I've got to deal with some personal stuff there, even if it's a tandem jump. Where you have an expert or a professional strapped to your back. That's something that I really have to think about, if I'm really going to do that. I might, somebody's going to have to twist my arm pretty seriously. But those are things that you have to be aware of when you're dating, when you're searching out a relationship. You have to remember that there's a lot of biology going on beneath the surface that we can't see, and that most of us don't know about. And that's part of the reason I'm here, is to help you recognize some of these things. I don't expect you to remember that dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and some of these other hormones are going to have an effect on you, but you should be able to recognize when you're under the influence of infatuation, when your knees get wobbly, when your toes tingle, when your stomach gets butterflies. These are some of the signs of infatuation. And when you're under that influence, you have to be able to step away to make some good decisions. You have to be able to make rational decisions. And I think a week or two I talked about how we make decisions. That 95% of our decisions are made based on emotion. So think about it. If 95% of relationships are based on emotion, or are based on emotional decisions, how many times have you made emotional decisions that were not healthy decisions? Now, some of them, and what we tend to do is we tend to come back and justify that. We make the decision. Look at the car you bought. Look at the home you bought. Look, it wasn't because it was mechanically sound. It wasn't because it was whatever you're looking at. The home wasn't specifically because it was in the right neighborhood, or any of those things. It made you feel a certain way. The person, the last person you dated for any significant time, or the person you're dating now, or your ex, when you first started dating, they made you feel a certain way, and you made a decision to date them because of the way they made you feel. Again, that's an emotional decision. You start developing an emotional attachment to people. You develop emotional attachments to things. Again, look at the last car you bought, or the apartment you're renting, or the whatever it is, whatever big purchase. And I'm referring mostly to big purchases. I'm not talking about going to the grocery store, but even there's a lot of emotional decisions made there. How many times do grocers or retailers rearrange their stores so you have to walk down different aisles? They're doing that because they know they're going to get you to make impulse buys. They're going to get you to do things based on emotion. Oh, that looks good. Oh, that sounds so good. Let's make that for dinner tonight. How many times have you done that? I know I've done it hundreds of times, if not thousands of times. And we do the same thing when we get into a relationship. We want to think that we're, oh, well, no, Rick, I would never do that. I think through these much more carefully. Well, odds are you don't. Unless you have your must-have and your deal-breaker list put together, and you know what you bring to the table, odds are you're making these decisions by emotion, and then we come back and justify it. Oh, it was on sale. Oh, it meets all of my, if you're buying a car, it meets all of my needs. It's a 4-door. It has a big motor. It has a lot of trunk space. Whatever you and it's probably the color or the smell of a new car, or the looks of this car. It may be sleek, it may be modern, it's 10 years newer or 15 years newer than your last car, and it has heated seats and all these things that make you feel warm and fuzzy. Relationships work the same way. And then you come back and justify it. Well, he treats me well. Well, she does this. She's cute. It's there are a ton of things that we justify after the fact that we've made an emotional decision. And man, how do we veer off from that's just the way I am to making emotional decisions? But that's the way it goes here on Monday Mastery. It just depends on, especially Random Thought Mondays, that I just blast off into infinity and beyond. But anyway, those are things that we have to be aware of. And that's one of the, in getting back to a comment I made a little bit ago, I've been writing this week, and that's one of the things that I rediscovered about myself, is I tried to change my ex. I tried to change some of the characteristics about her. I thought I could. I thought, well, I'm a great guy. She loves me. I love her, and she'll do that for me. Well, no. After 25 years, we ended up calling it quits for pretty much those specific reasons. And the sad thing is that I recognized those things in the first 30 to 45 days, mostly 30 days. First 30 days we dated. And they were things that I should have just said, nope, these are things that are not on my list. These are deal breakers. And lo and behold, I made a decision based on emotion, and then tried to justify it later. But when I'm making decisions based on emotions, those decisions are going to unravel after a while. The things that you thought you could fix, the things you thought you could change, the things you thought you could live with, they're all going to come back to bite you. And that's why it's so critical to understand how all of this stuff works. It's so critical to make sure that you're making decisions based on logic. And I know it says, but Rick, it's love, it's all this other stuff. It's yes, you can have all that, all of the emotions, keep all of the emotions in there. But again, that's why I keep coming back to the must have and deal breaker list, because you can temporarily step back from the emotions and all of the raging hormones that are attached to infatuation and say, does he have everything I'm looking for? Is she this or is she that, or whatever it is? And then if they're not meeting those criteria, and I have people that come and tell me, Rick, you can't do that. And I say, yes, you can, because these are the things, these are the traits, these are the characteristics you want, need, and desire in your next relationship. And to say no, you can't have those things, that's like, well, why not just go back to arranged marriages? Then then it's a crapshoot. You might, your parents or whoever arranges the relationship will have a little bit of understanding about you, but they don't know what's deep down in your heart. They don't know your desires. They don't know your needs. I mean, you can talk about it, you can share those things, but nobody's really going to know how somebody is going to make you feel. You're not going to know if there's going to be a chemistry, or if it's just you're going to go through the motions. And the saddest thing is that most marriages that last, and about 60%, statistically, about 60% of first marriages last. But of that, again, statistically, only about 20% of those are happy, healthy relationships. So that means, in the grand scheme of things, that only about 12 to 15% of all marriages are really good, wonderful marriages. They're the types of relationships, the types of marriages that the rest of us want to emulate. And I've kind of uncovered over the years that you need to be able to develop an intellectual, a spiritual, an emotional, and a physical connection, as a start. So when I talk about your must have and your deal breaker list, that's just the entry. That's just the entry level stuff. That's the gatekeeper, the standard that you're setting for yourself, and those people that you're going to let into your world. And after that, you need to develop the intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and physical connections. Those are all fundamental to all great or extraordinary relationships. You have to be able to develop all of those connections. And it's so hard. Relationships are so hard to develop when you're not on the same page on a number of things. It might be that if you're not on the same page spiritually, that will throw a huge divider or a wedge into your relationship. That will throw a uh, it just creates another barrier or a hurdle that you both have to climb over, climb around, or work through. And it just makes the work on the back end of the relationship so much more difficult. And the whole idea of dating, the whole idea of, and let's back this bus up a little bit. Dating is the act of going out with people just to meet them, get to know them, and that's it. Then the act of courting is getting to know them well enough to see if that's somebody that you actually want to marry. It's the pre-marriage stuff. It's the committing to each other. It's the I want to spend the rest of my life, or decide whether I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Because as you're courting somebody, you have to learn a lot about them. You have to learn whether you're compatible spiritually, whether you're compatible emotionally. You have to intellectually. You want to share the same morals and values, and you should have some shared goals. Now you're not going to have the same, all of your goals aren't going to be the same, but you want to have things that you want to have a lot in common. And the more you have in common, the easier that relationship will be. It's it's one of those, the idea, and this is what I've seen throughout my career, and even when I was with my ex, we went to counseling, and it was about adjusting to each other. It was, and I'm not saying you shouldn't adjust to each other, but there were things about my ex that drove me crazy. There were things about me that drove her crazy. And for us to start changing who we are as people becomes extremely difficult. You need to start burying part of you. I had to start burying my sense of humor because my ex finally told me, "Well, I really don't like your sense of humor." So I had to start watching, everything I said. And it's hard to build a relationship when you're basically walking on eggshells. I don't know how many of you have been in relationships like that, where you have to be very careful about the words you say and how you say them, and what you share with, and sometimes it's even what you share with them. That can totally throw off what what how the relationship is going to proceed. So, though that's why I'm such a proponent of doing all this work, all this stuff up front, rather than trying to fix a broken relationship. Let's find the right relationship up front. Let's find the relationship that's easy on our souls. It's not a struggle. It's not a battle. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be things that come up that you're going to butt heads on. I mean, we're all different, and we are going to have those situations. But when you have more in common than not, it makes it easier because you're fighting for the relationship, or you're working towards maintaining a healthy relationship. And even the healthiest relationships are going to argue. The healthiest of partners are going to have disagreements. It's just part of who we are as a human species. There are going to be things that I want to do that you don't. There's going to be things that you want to do that I don't. But for peace, and because and if you're in a great relationship, he's going to do that for you, or she's going to do that because she wants to make you happy, or he wants to make you happy. It doesn't mean that he gives a crap about whatever you ask him to do. Could be the last thing on his agenda, but he does it because he loves you, or she does it because she loves you. And so it's so much. It dating can be dating can be difficult from the standpoint if you're looking for that extraordinary relationship, because there are going to be a lot of one and done dates. There are going to be a lot of disappointments that, oh, I thought he was the one, or oh, I thought she was the one. It's because there can be some really strong connections, and sometimes it's those hormones, it's the emotions that get in there and say, oh man, I love her, I would do anything for her. I still have someone that I love to death. I would do anything for her. But will that be enough to bring us together? Absolutely not. It's one of those things that there would have to be some major changes, and probably on both sides. And I know that neither one of us are going to change those particular characteristics in ourselves. So it's a matter of finding that person that meets your wants, needs, and desires, and that's difficult. That takes time, and the more must-haves and that you have, it's more difficult to find that particular person. Sometimes it's going to take reaching out beyond your local area. It may require a long distance relationship, and I know, and a lot of you are saying, yeah, I can see that right now. Nope, I'm not dealing with a long distance relationship. That just doesn't work. Well, for some of you, that's okay. And then you're going to have to deal with that. But just you have to take into consideration that whatever town you're in, whatever city you're in, probably at least one third, and I'm talking about 40 years old or 35 years old and up, uh, at, at least one third of your community is divorced or widowed or still single. And I'm keeping the millennials, anybody under 35, out of this. These are just the statistics from the Census Bureau. And I look at the Kansas City area, there's over 2 million people here, and there's over 800,000 singles. And it's nearly evenly divided. And in the Kansas City area, so many people get up in arms because, oh, Kansas City's such a terrible place to date. Why is that? It's because somebody in Nevada, in Las Vegas, said, yeah, these are the worst places. And they've never been here. These are the worst places to date. They've never been here, and yet for those of us that are in the Kansas City area, most of us, there's just a ton of things to do. We've got a great symphony. We've got one of the greatest football teams in the league right now. Baseball, not so much, but we have a professional baseball team. We have soccer. We have all of these social things. We've got the only World War I museum in the country, I think in the world. So and there are theaters. There's college sports. There's anything that you want to do. There's the ability to do it. There's great bicycle trails. There's great hiking trails. There's rivers nearby that you can go floating on. It doesn't take a major production to go to some of these places. There's so much within reach. Even the covered bridges of Madison County are only about 2 hours from here, about a 2.5 hour drive from here. It's a matter of what you want to do. So there are and you have to sometimes get out of your own head. You have to think outside the box. And again, I hate using that phrase because it's so overused, but you have to think for yourself. You have to say, okay, I'm looking for this type of person. Where can I find this type of person? What are the characteristics that I'm looking for? Where is this type of person going to spend their time? And then Google it, or go to and I use artificial intelligence, also known as AI. I use an app called Chat GPT, and you can ask this thing questions, and it doesn't have access to the internet, but it comes up with knowledge. It comes up with stuff that you would never think about. Go to an artificial intelligence app and say, where would I find somebody with these characteristics? And I'll bet you dollars to donuts. And that's something I'll do over the next week and just see what happens, what prints out. But odds are it's going to give you some places to look, some things to think about. If you like pickleball, if you like dancing, if you like, whatever it is, it will have a list of things for, if you like listening to live music. There's plenty of venues around for and I'm talking about Kansas City, but for wherever you are, look for these things. If you've got to drive 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, go out and enjoy yourself. And you have to be an active participant. You can't be sitting at home saying God will bring me the one and not be working towards it. I hear that phrase a lot. Man, it's just, you cannot sit at home. You have to be an active participant. You can't come to me and say, Rick, dating sucks, and then only have had 4 or 5 dates in the last year. It means you're not working at it. If you're really working at it, you should be having at least 2 to 3 dates with different people every month. Unless of course you are dating somebody specific, in a committed relationship, there should be no reason that you don't have a date with somebody different. And I'm assuming that these dates are basically one and done, because most of your dates will be. Most of your dates, you'll get together. There won't be chemistry. You'll discover something that they do have, say, that is not going to be, or that is going to be a deal breaker. It's not, or it's going to say, yeah, no, I don't think so. There are things that they're going to do, say, or have, that you say, oh, they may not be the right one for me, but I do want this characteristic in my next relationship. So it's all about getting out and meeting people. It's about being social. It's about getting out there, and I know is a lot of you hate the online apps, but there are some apps like Bumble. And ladies, I know a lot of you say you're old fashioned. Well, if you're old fashioned, then you should be reaching out to the men and making them aware that you're interested. And I know that's not going to go over well, because a lot of you look at as old fashioned as the man has to do all the work. The man has to make all the moves. The man has to make all the decisions. He has to create some over the top date. He has to plan all these wonderful things for you, while you sit back and enjoy and say, I wonder if I could, I wonder if, and start looking to see what kind of future you could possibly have. But then just remember, he's doing the same thing. If he's doing all the planning, if he's putting in all the effort, and you're just riding along, what do you think he's thinking? And that's a question you all have to really think about. If you want an over the top date, why aren't you planning an over the top date? Why aren't you making suggestions? Because listen, a relationship is supposed to be a two-way street. It's supposed to be a partnership. And partnerships require input from two people. And if you're making him do all the work up front, what does he get in return? And guys, if she says anything like, well, he gets this, then you should run, and just right there. Because you have to understand that as wonderful as she might be, as beautiful as she might be, ladies, you've got to put in your share of the effort. You've got to put in your share of the work. Cook him dinner. If that's, and that's something that you have to, you can't do that on the first date, or maybe not even the second or third or fourth date, but at some point, there's got to be some reciprocal effort. It's just because you want to, when you're dating, you want to find somebody that's going to put in effort to the relationship. And ladies, don't misunderstand me. If you're putting in all the effort and he's not, well, then you should be walking away also, because you should be looking for somebody who's going to put in effort, who's going to be a helper, because we're supposed to be working. That's the Christian foundation of relationships. God made woman to be a helpmate. So, and don't come at me with the long knives, because I have a Christian background. For those of you that might listen to this later, it's why we were designed, and we're supposed to work together. We both have strengths in different areas. We bring different things to the relationship, and that's what we're that's what we should be looking for, is somebody that brings strengths that you don't have. I look for people that for a partner that has strengths that I don't have, and I should be able to bring something to the table that she doesn't have. That strengths that she doesn't have. So that we can enhance each other's lives. We're not supposed to be there to tear each other down or tear each other up or insult each other, or when you're in that type of a relationship, that man, you just need to run from that. And all too often, and I've heard people say, well, I've invested 5 years into this relationship. I don't want to give up now. Well, what the heck? You've just spent 5 years. Back in the first 30 days that it was the wrong relationship, but you've spent 5 years. Yeah, well, he's been good to me, or, she's done a lot of good stuff for me. She makes me laugh, or, whatever it is. Doesn't make any difference. You've wasted 5 years. From the point you recognize that this is not the right relationship, or this is not the relationship you're looking for. Up until that point, it's a discovery time. From that point on, it's a waste of time, because you're not going to change them. And if you try, it's a futile effort. You may get them to change temporarily, but somewhere down the road, it's going to backfire on you, and you're going to get burned. And they're going to be angry and resentful. And the next thing you know, you've got a relationship that's falling apart. When, in fact, you knew back around 30 days, 45 days, maybe within the first 60 days, then it's time to walk away. That's the time it's time to walk away, before you invest a lot of emotional time and energy. So anyway, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, I'd mentioned the book earlier, was 59 Seconds. And this book, again, is very technical. It's very dry. And I listened for 5 hours, and it was, this is brutal. But I learned some interesting stuff. And they were talking about relationships. And this is a book that's based on study after study after study. Everything in the book is based on scientific research. And one of the things that they said, when you're dating, if you want to increase your probability of getting her to dance with you, and this one is for guys, but it works both ways. They said this technique, this works both ways, between men and women. And guys, if you ask the woman to dance, you increase, I think it was by 1/3, you increase your probability of her dancing with you, just by placing your hand on the upper part of her arm, just for a second. And ladies, the same way. If you're talking to a guy and you want him to call you, or to you want to get his phone number, it's just a light touch on his arm, on his upper arm, right, where am I? Right about there, down below the elbow, but just a light touch on the arm. And if you go above that, it gets creepy, and it's been determined to be creepy and almost assaulting, not insulting, but an assault. But it's just for a second. And for those of you that are of the love language physical touch, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you do it naturally. But a lot of people don't. But what they said is that when this was a particular one particular study that said that men that went and asked a woman to dance, he without a physical touch, had about a 42% chance of having the lady dance with him. But that increased to over 60% when he touched her on the arm. And so it creates a connection between the two of you. it creates just a momentary link, and there are some other technical stuff involved with it, but and I'm not going to go into that here because it's just way too involved and way too deep. But think about that the next time you ask somebody for a favor, the next time you want to meet somebody and say, "Hey, would you like to go for a drink?" Or "Hey, I'm going for coffee. Would you like to go with me?" And just a slight touch on the arm. And it's just it's not a guarantee, but it will improve the odds of you having them go with you. You just it's just it's it shows um I don't want to it's not attraction, it's interest. It shows interest. And there's just something that happens biologically when we do that. When somebody touches us, it's just like we don't think about it consciously, but you tend to want to follow that person. So if they're going out on the dance floor, you follow them out on the dance floor. If they're going for a cup of coffee, you go for a cup of coffee. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it's a great way to uh, to increase the odds, increase your chances, or improve your chances of success when you ask somebody out, when you ask somebody for a date. And it can be the same, you can do the same thing. "Hey, I've enjoyed our conversation. Would you like to go out sometime?" And you just touch their arm. Um, and it improves your chances. It's not 100%, but I thought it was a very interesting observation, or a very interesting study. It wasn't an observation, it was a study. And I can't tell you who the study is by. The author of this book is from England, and there's a lot of studies from England, and then they use a lot of studies from the United States, and it really is fascinating. And some of the things that we assume that we know are absolutely incorrect, and some of the things that we do know are corroborated by science. So it's a fascinating book. If you're into statistics, give it a listen or give it a read. If you like to read about statistics, yeah. I just as soon listen, because then I can. That's brain windshield time is great time for me to listen to stuff like that. But anyway, let's wrap it up for today. I hope this has been good for everyone. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation today. I hope you all got something out of it. And I will see you all next week, unless you have any questions. Fire those in real quick. Otherwise, we'll give that just a second. Otherwise, I hope wherever you're at, you've got nice sunny weather, that you're enjoying the weather. Unfortunately, the folks back in Michigan are getting rain, and the sad part is that rain starts, especially if it's heavier rain, starts to knock the leaves off the trees, and then the color disappears real quickly. While it's not in peak color yet, it's getting close. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it today, and I will see you all next Monday, and I'll be right here in the Kansas City area. Have a great week, everyone. I love you. Thanks for your comments, and I will see you next week.